The room buzzed with an electric energy. It was an exclusive event in New York City, where the city's elite had gathered for a charity gala. Everyone was dressed to impress, yet Barron Trump arrived with his usual understated confidence. His sharp suit and calm demeanor caught eyes, but not in the way one might expect. Despite being instantly recognizable, Barron didn't carry the air of entitlement most assumed he would. Instead, he moved quietly, shaking hands, exchanging polite smiles, and engaging in brief but meaningful conversations with the guests. As Barron approached a man standing near the bar, the atmosphere subtly shifted. The man, mid-50s, dressed impeccably, exuded an air of self-importance. His sharp gaze met Barron's, and for a moment it seemed as though he was calculating something. Barron extended his hand with a warm smile, as he had done with everyone else that evening. But the man didn't respond. Instead, he folded his arms across his chest, his expression hardening. "No, thank you," the man said coldly, his voice cutting through the hum of chatter. For a moment there was silence. People nearby noticed the exchange, their conversations pausing mid-sentence as their eyes darted toward Barron. The refusal wasn't subtle. It was deliberate and loud enough for others to hear. Some whispered, others simply stared, waiting to see how Barron would respond. Barron didn't flinch. His smile didn't waver, but there was a flicker of something deeper in his eyes. Curiosity, perhaps even empathy. "That's okay," Barron replied, his tone measured and calm. "A handshake isn't the only way to connect." He let his hand drop and took a step back, giving the man space, his voice carrying just enough warmth to diffuse the tension in the air. The man's face hardened further. "You don't get it, do you?" he snapped, his tone laced with disdain. "I don't support people like you." The words hung in the air like an uncomfortable echo, and the audience around them stiffened. Barron's calm demeanor seemed almost unnatural in the face of such blatant hostility, but he didn't retreat. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, as though trying to understand. "People like me?" Barron asked, his voice soft but unwavering. There was no anger, no defensiveness, just a genuine question. The man's jaw tightened. "You come from privilege," he said bluntly. "You've never worked for anything. And yet, here you are, parading around as if you belong." A collective gasp rippled through the room. The tension was palpable, and all eyes were now on Barron. The young Trump could have responded in anger, or turned his back on the man, but instead, he took a step closer. "You're right," Barron said, his voice steady. "I've had opportunities many people can only dream of. But that's exactly why I'm here tonight, to use that privilege for something bigger than myself." His gaze didn't waver. "This event isn't about me or where I come from. It's about making a difference. And I think that's something we can all stand behind, no matter where we've been or what we've done." The room was silent. The man opened his mouth to respond, but seemed caught off guard by Barron's humility. For the first time, his expression faltered. Barron turned to the audience that had gathered around them. "I'm not here to prove anything to anyone," he said, addressing not just the man but everyone present. "I'm here because I believe in the power of collective action. And if shaking hands isn't your thing, that's okay. But I hope we can still stand together for a good cause." The crowd murmured in agreement, a wave of quiet respect spreading through the room. The man's face softened slightly, though he still said nothing. Barron didn't wait for a response. He simply nodded respectfully and moved on, resuming his conversations as though nothing had happened. The incident, though seemingly small, became the highlight of the evening. By the end of the night, whispers about Barron's response had reached nearly every corner of the event. Some admired his composure. Others were impressed by his ability to turn a hostile moment into one of unity. But Barron, as always, didn't seem concerned with the attention. He left the gala the same way he had arrived. Calm, collected, and focused on the bigger picture. As the night wore on, the gala shifted gears. The speeches began, with prominent figures taking the stage to share stories of triumph, resilience, and the importance of giving back. Barron sat at his table, listening intently, his expression calm but thoughtful. He wasn't just present. He was engaged. Yet, the earlier incident lingered in the minds of those who had witnessed it. The man who had refused Barron's handshake remained seated at the far end of the room, his eyes occasionally flickering toward Barron with a mixture of curiosity and discomfort.
When Barron's name was announced as the next speaker, the room erupted into polite applause. He rose from his seat, straightened his suit, and made his way to the stage. His steps were unhurried, his demeanor unshaken, as though the weight of expectation didn't bother him. Taking the microphone, Barron scanned the audience briefly before speaking. "Good evening, everyone," he began, his voice steady but warm. "Tonight isn't about individuals or accolades. It's about what we can achieve together when we set aside our differences and focus on what truly matters." He paused, letting his words settle. The audience leaned in, drawn by the sincerity in his tone. "Earlier this evening," he continued, "I had an interaction that reminded me why events like this are so important. It reminded me that we all come from different places, with different perspectives and experiences. And that's okay. It's those differences that give us the strength to create change." The room was utterly silent, captivated. Even the man who had dismissed Barron earlier was now sitting up straighter, his expression unreadable. "I've been fortunate," Barron said, acknowledging his privilege openly. "I know that. But privilege is only as good as what you do with it. Tonight, we're here to support causes that go beyond any one of us. We're here to stand for those who don't have the opportunities we've been given. And that's something we can all agree on, no matter who we are." The applause was immediate, rippling through the room with genuine enthusiasm. Barron's words resonated deeply, not because they were rehearsed or polished, but because they were real. He wasn't trying to win anyone over. He was simply speaking from the heart. As he stepped down from the stage, the man who had refused his handshake earlier stood abruptly. Barron noticed but didn't react, continuing to make his way back to his seat. But before he could sit, the man approached him, his face a mixture of hesitation and something that resembled regret. "I misjudged you," the man said, his voice low but clear. "I thought I knew who you were, but I was wrong." That was a powerful speech. Barron looked at him for a moment, then extended his hand once more, the same warm smile on his face. This time the man took it, shaking it firmly. The gesture was small, almost understated, but it carried a weight that the entire room seemed to feel. "Thank you," Barron replied simply. The incident didn't end with that handshake. The man, inspired by Barron's humility, pledged a significant donation to the charity that evening, a gesture that surprised everyone, including himself. Later, as the event wound down, he sought Barron out again, this time to apologize in earnest. "I let my assumptions get the better of me," the man admitted, his voice filled with sincerity. "I've been too quick to judge people based on what I think I know about them. You showed me tonight that I need to be better than that." Barron nodded, his expression thoughtful. "We all have our moments," he said. "What matters is what we do next." By the end of the night, the story of the handshake that almost didn't happen had spread beyond the walls of the gala. Guests shared it on social media, and it quickly became a symbol of humility, grace, and the power of human connection. Barron didn't linger for the attention. He left quietly, just as he'd arrived, carrying himself with the same steady resolve. The headlines the next day would tell the story in their own way. But for those who were there, the real impact wasn't in the words printed on paper. It was in the feeling that lingered long after the night ended. The belief that even in a divided world, small moments of understanding could still bring people together.